All right, I think we can start. I'm thankful to all of you for being here. I know we are, most of us are working from home. Some of you would have joined from office. There'll be a few more people who join, but I think we can start. So uh, I'll just share my screen because I have prepared a few slides for you guys. Right, so okay, so today we'll be talking about product roadmaps, but we will be focusing on how to look at customer feedback and then create a product roadmap that actually works and also makes your users happy. So I'll use customers and users interchangeably, but the idea is to actually convey how important your customer feedback is at every step. So my name is Tashfeen. I am a user experience designer at Bayut, and I also look at the mobile apps at bayut.com. Bayut is a leading property search portal in the UAE. And we have a lot of B2B and B2C products, and we work with customers and build roadmaps almost every week. So we're working on these things every week, and we're optimizing our live roadmap where we're working on different features. So when we look at like different products, so this is Word, which we saw when in its early ages, and how products evolve is really interesting. So this is Word today, and this is based on uh, the different sort of customer feedback that we receive. By the way, if you have any questions, just use the chat to send your questions. I'll answer them at the end, where we'll have like a Q&A or discussion on all the questions you have. So um, to continue, so I was talking about like, based on like customer feedback and the business strategy, you create a whole bigger thing that actually solves a lot of other problems. This is Amazon when it started for books, Earth's biggest bookstore. And this is what it looks like today. And it has evolved so much that Amazon now offers a lot of other things like the AWS web services, the hosting that a lot of companies use. It all comes from Amazon. And when we look at like an idea, like when you start, you come up with this idea that you think that, okay, this is the problem that I'm trying to solve. And over time, you realize that it's a huge business opportunity. And there are like a lot of pain points that that you can actually work on. And if you have bandwidth, you actually start creating a thing that actually becomes bigger over time. So products evolve, but we have to keep in mind a few things. We have to, for example, this is a very good example of like how your product should be built. Not like creating a tire and then putting two tires together and then going towards a car, but actually creating something that actually moves with two tires and then building on top of that. Now, a viable product is better because you can go to the customer and you can ask them if they really want this product. So for example, in the first case, if you spend 4 years doing the whole process and you realize that, okay, this is something that the customers don't really want, or the world has moved to an age where this is not needed at the moment. So then you basically waste a lot of your time and you will not find the correct solution to the problem. But if you actually find out that this is not the right problem to solve, you will basically at the initial stages, you will basically save a lot of time. So when we talk about amazing products, they're desirable, they're feasible, and they're viable. So desirable means that your customers really need them. So when they look at it, they're like, okay, this is the thing that I want. Feasible means that it's not a machine that teleports someone, because that's really not possible right now. And viable is something that it's complete. So in the previous slide, we talked about like going in a way that is complete, but like a minimum viable product. Um, so when we talk to customers about building features and different things, so this is like a really good example from Henry Ford, where users come up with all sorts of requests. If you ask them what they need, they'd say a faster horse. And then you're like, okay, here you go. But this is not how things work. We have to like take their feedback. So when we talk about customer feedback, we have to see that, okay, if they need a faster horse, that means speed is a very important attribute. And then you ask them a follow-up question about what else is important to them. And then, so they would say, okay, reliability matters, stamina too. So basically they'll come up with all sorts of things that they need. And in all of this, in this entire discussion, you'll realize that there are a lot of problems that they currently face, and you can solve them. So when we talk about customer feedback, it's really tricky to parse, especially in the case of the youth. Like, people come to us with all sorts of requests. It's just a really, like, it's noise, and then from all of that you have to filter out what exactly is important, because all of this will feed into your plan, your roadmap. So users usually have an expertise in their problem. So when they're saying that, okay, this is my problem, but they have like a hacky way of solving it, and they have like preconceived solutions, so they can't really tell you what the solution should be. So you really need to understand the problem and find the best way to really solve that solution, because you are a person who is creating the product, and like, as a product manager or a product owner or a founder, you really have all these variables that you can use to actually solve that problem. So users usually overstate or understate the importance of a problem, or like something that they really need. So based on, so when I look at product roadmaps, they're like based on a lot of decisions, and good decisions are made by knowing your input. So you get like a lot of inputs from different sources, and you have to filter them out. So how do you do that? That's like really important. And not only filtering, as a product owner, you really need to prioritize things. So there are like strategies that you can implement on how to prioritize things. And when I talk about like prioritizing things and all of these strategies, they can be implemented in smaller startups, and they can be implemented in bigger organizations where you're actually managing a single product, because product managers can be seen as like CEOs of that particular product. So basically, all these inputs that you're getting, when you talk to your sales and customer service, they'll give you like a lot of insights. And at Bayut, we do this a lot, where we're talking to the salespeople, and we're like, what sort of inputs are they getting from the users? And when we're not doing that, they come to us. So there's a lot of inflow from there. The support people come to us with a lot of problems. We directly go to the users. So there are like a lot of ways in which we are getting all these inputs. So this diagram actually gives you an idea of like the inbound and outbound strategies of getting all these variables that you can actually then filter out and work on. So, so on the top, you can see that there is, okay, so customer feedback, sales, your team, and then there are like support tickets, and all of these inputs that you're getting from the sales team, or they're like inbound. So users reaching out to you. And then on the other hand, you can conduct interviews, which is really important at every stage. It's of your entire process, like building an MVP and then improving it. You have to go to the user, you have to talk to them to really understand what their problems are. So with all these inputs, you actually then have to explain them to stakeholders, and then you have to come up with like a presentation. And then if you're running your own startup, your stakeholders are your team, and then you have to like also create a business case, and there are like a lot of filters, and at the end you come up with an opportunity. So, and then there are like a lot of problems that okay, so this can be about a feature that you're trying to launch or a product that you're trying to build. When it comes to feature, for example, there are like a lot of instances where I've personally experienced that feature A is wanted by a lot of small customers, and then there's feature B that a big high profile customer wants this. So this is really interesting, because what do you prioritize as a product manager or product owner? You have to prioritize one over the other. Obviously, like users would say that we'll need both of them, and then there are like stakeholders who tell you that we'll need both of them. But as a product manager, you have to really prioritize one or the other. So to answer this question, it would be like really important to see what your focus is. If you're focused towards smaller customers, high volume, then you have to prioritize feature A. Otherwise, you go with feature B. So it's really product managers sometimes forget that they have to really see the business value of things. But that's the most important part. You have to understand what's the business value in this. You have to understand the mission, the vision of the company. And after that, you have to like come up with a solution that also works for the customers. So at Youth, what we usually do is, so over the past few months, we have seen like a lot of good reviews on our apps, and our rating on, let's say, Play Store has increased tremendously. And how we did that was we basically really sorted out the customer feedback, and from all the sources, customer reaching out through the Play Store and other places as well. So this is a review that we got for Youth, and there's a problem. So they're saying that the app crashes, and then there are like a lot of notifications that they're getting and they can't turn them off. Now, this is a high priority thing. As a product manager, I had to work on this. So we prioritize these things on our roadmap, and the result was that they came back to us and they updated their review because their problem was solved. So if you do something good, the customers come back to you and actually give you something in return. And that return really feels good, because you actually know that you have actually solved their problem. So, but the thing is, and then like, this is one example, but we get thousands of requests every week, and it's like chaos. So we had to find like a framework where we can actually divide all of this into different, by type or function. So for example, if there are UX issues, they're gonna go to the UX team. If there are bug reports, the tech team will solve it. And if there's like operations related issues, the operations team will solve it. So like, and they're like feature requests that the product team has to manage themselves. So when we're talking about all of these, the product team come like a lot of these requests come to us directly, and then we have to prioritize different features. And throughout the process, so obviously, if there are like thousands of requests, we can't really work on all the issues, but there are ways, I'm going to talk about them at a later point, on how to prioritize the ones that are really important. And for smaller startups, I understand it's not a lot of input. So you go with like an outbound way of getting all these inputs from the users. A lot of times, the thing is that sometimes you really work on, let's say, a prototype or a product, and you go to the customer and you interview them, and then they're like, we don't really need it. And then there are like at times you create a solution, and then they say, okay, this is what we need. And then you present them with the design, and they're like, okay, this doesn't really solve our problem. For example, if someone has to like download a file, and you have like a big button that says download on the screen, the users will say, okay, I don't see a download button. So usability testing, user interviews, and all of these resources, I'm going to talk about them in this slide. But all of these are really important to understand your customer. So initially, when you're trying to work on a problem, it's really important to analyze your competitors, understand customer needs. And how you do that is that there are quantitative methods and qualitative methods. And a lot of time, and like, it's usually easier to go with like the quantitative methods, but qualitative methods also give you a lot of insights. And if you can analyze them in the right way, and if you can, for example, like user interviews, you conduct a user interview, you solve the problem, and then you go back to the user to test the prototype. Now, this would actually give users usually like this, because they're like, okay, this is solving our problem. But then you have to do it with a lot of users, but not more than 5, because what happens is the problems that, for example, with usability testing, if 5 users are telling you that there's a problem, 15 would tell you the same thing, most probably. So there is this notion of like testing it with a limit, so that you can test a lot of other things as well. And then you plan. So based on your prototype and based on all of this, these insights you get from the market and from your customers, you plan a roadmap for your product. And then you work on a beta. And then you go back to the user. You conduct interviews, usability testing, and then once you launch, now this is the most important part, because as product owners or product makers, I think we usually forget that once it's launched, it's done, but it's not usually like that. So you really you really need to go back to the metrics, track them. And if you're A/B testing solutions, it's really important to actually get the insights and implement something that works for the user. So from all of this, like we've talked about customer empathy. So I personally feel like your roadmap should come from customer obsession. And this has a lot of background to it, because usually we feel like roadmap is something that I can plan and I know how to solve the problem. I am the product maker, and I have a lot of experience doing this, so I can basically build a roadmap around this. But no, if you talk to customers, they will tell you their problems, then you come up with a solution, and then you build it. And while you're building it, you can go back to the customer and iterate, or if you have to change the problem entirely, you pivot. So pivoting would involve changing the problem and the solution. Iterations would involve changing the solution. And if the customer, like there will be a lot of moments when you're talking to the customer and they're like, okay, yeah, this is the problem that I want to solve. It feels really good. And if a lot of customers are saying that this is an actual problem, you have to like prioritize it, because that's where most of the value is. So, and while creating roadmaps, you have to keep the mission statement or the vision of the company in mind, because if you're creating a roadmap that's like for something that doesn't really cover what your company was built for, then you basically need to pivot or basically need to change the solution that you're creating, because you have to stay in the boundaries of it. And this is a very nice quote from director of product management and Airbnb. And basically, if you're working on a roadmap, it's a good idea to pin it on top of your roadmap and then build it. So, and your roadmap cannot simply be like your backlog. It is based on the goals and vision of your company. And when we talk about your product vision, so since like you have to cover the vision of the company, and since you're building a product, it would also cover, like the product will be under the umbrella of your company. So you have to come up with a product vision, who your customers are, their need, and you actually define what the name is, the category, and then you tell the key benefits and the competitor, and then the differentiation, which is really important when you are, and all of these, so all of these templates, like they seem like, okay, this is something that I've already done, but you have to like jot it down, because as humans, we tend to forget things, we tend to ignore things. But if it's there while you're building a product roadmap, it's always a good idea to go back to it and see if you're really you really following the product vision that you created. So with that in mind, like from product vision coming to your daily plan, product roadmap lies somewhere in between. So obviously, when you're solving a problem, you know your customer, you've talked to them, and sorry, and then with you set some goals based on like, okay, these are like really generic goals which actually define define the problems that you're solving. And they shouldn't be really specific. For example, if you're creating a map, you're including a map inside your app, it should actually tell the value that the map is going to bring. It's not going to tell you, it shouldn't tell you that, oh, we're integrating Google Maps, because that's really specific. And then you come up with like a product roadmap that's based on themes, not your features, not specific things, but based on themes. You break it down into release plan and backlog, and then you break it down into a daily plan, which you review in daily stand-ups. So this is like a product onion that is really helpful when you're creating the daily plan, and coming from like a top-down approach, you keep in mind your product vision. So, and we've seen like different sorts of product roadmaps, and this is one you keep in mind. The quarters, so there's like a time horizon up top, and then you have your basically all the efforts that you're trying to do broken down. And then there are like other sorts where you don't have like dates mentioned, and it really depends on like how you are with dates. So if you're good with deadlines, it's a good idea to create this. But if you're not meeting your deadlines and you're creating a product roadmap, you don't need to create a time horizon or make it something that says near term, or something that's like a Kanban board, for example, to do, doing, done, or canceled. And this can be like near term backlog and doing. Because if you do that, it would actually be easier because you don't have specific dates and you're going to present this product roadmap to a lot of people. So to your engineering, to your team members, and sometimes it's like a public thing where you present it to customers. And with this in mind, um, your product roadmap is not something that you have to create and then just leave. It's sort of like a live thing that you have to come back to, and you have to like keep it updated, and you have to put in more information. So there are like a lot of online tools that you can use to create roadmaps, and it doesn't need to be like super simple where you just write the title of the things that you're doing. It can be descriptive, where you click into it and then you get a description, and it defines what theme are you targeting and what problem are you trying to solve. So like I said, it should be theme-based or outcome-based, and it should be a lean, live product roadmap. And then when we say like a live roadmap, it's not, I mean, it's an agile way of doing it. So this is a quote from and the CTO of Appfolio, and they follow an agile roadmap as well, where they keep updating it based on the customer feedback they're getting. Because if you create a roadmap and say that, okay, this is locked and this is what we're going to do, customer needs are evolving in the background. So you have to like take that inflow of ideas and really manage it in a way where you implement it into the roadmap. So, and then we come to like prioritizing different features, like we talked before, where I talked about the B2C and B2B customers. So you're presented with all of this fire hose of ideas, and then you come up with like different solutions, and now you have to prioritize it. So one way of doing it is to see the value of that feature. And there are like a lot of ways, like this is something that can be customized. Like the scorecard methodology is a way of like seeing the total value that your feature brings and the cost. And based on that, like you divide it and you get a number that will give you what to prioritize. And the total value of that feature depends on what business you're in. So you can get like different attributes that you measure to get the value out of these features. So, and talking about measuring, you have to, like, as product managers and like as like our expertise is toward one side or the other. Either we're too focused towards the business oriented metrics, or if you're like a product maker like me, I'd be too focused towards product engagement metrics, because that's what I love, right? But then on the other hand, like we really need to understand that there is a lot of, really need to, for every feature, we have to understand the business value. And with all these customer requests coming in, all this data coming in, we have to break it down and see that, okay, this is how we're going to solve it, and this is the business value it brings. If there's no business value and you're solving it, you have to see if it unlocks some other potential opportunities. If it doesn't do any good to your business, then you have to really think again and see if you really need to prioritize it. So maybe you can do it at a later point in time. So there are like a lot of factors, the product engagement metrics and then business oriented metrics that you have to see while prioritizing on a product roadmap. And we were talking about like themes and creating product roadmaps, given that like you have to focus on a specific theme. So like we saw this product onion where we came from like product vision to your daily plan, and in the middle we had like the product roadmap. And on top of that, there are like themes that you have to target so that you're not so that you actually are keeping in mind the product mission and value that you form, and also solving the problems that the customers have. So this is an example of a theme. For example, you have to make the checkout process faster and better, let's say. So you have to give mobile support, you have to create a credit card, you have to implement the credit card API, you have to do UX improvements, and you have to add it to the new admin console. Now, these are like smaller tasks, but they come under this bigger theme that can also incorporate other customer requests that you need to prioritize. And then with all of this, you have to keep the stakeholders engaged throughout the process. So you plan something, you prioritize, and then you execute, release, and then you plan something else. With all of this, it's really important to get the stakeholder buy-in, because that's what product managers do. You have to structure it in a way that the thing you're doing, like every stakeholder should understand the importance of it. So for example, there's like bigger chunk of customers that need some feature urgently, and it brings a lot of value to other customers as well. You should prioritize it, but you also have to, within your, the internal stakeholders need to be notified, and you have to get their buy-in. So they will need to have, because if you don't involve them from the start, sometimes it's really shocking for them to see that, oh, this is something that you've been working on and we didn't know about it. And that's never a good idea, because sometimes you'll have to stop working on it, and at other times you'll have to change the way you work. So if you involve them from the planning stage, they give you good insights, and they understand the problem. So here's a very good quote on basically involving stakeholders. It says, as a product manager, you have to get cross-functional buy-in. I've been challenged by other departments. You have to get everyone in a room and ask them what their top priorities are. You have to rank it, scorecard it, whatever it takes, and you've got to hold them to it. So this basically tells that you involve all the stakeholders, you manage your priorities, and then you tell them that, okay, this is what we decided and this is what we're going to work on. And all of this, like that, the things that you're working on are coming from the customer requests and you understanding the customer needs and problems, and then coming up with solutions. So this is going to give you an overall basically a very good guide to making a product roadmap. So that's it for the presentation. I am gonna see if there are any, okay, let's see if there are any questions. Okay, so could you please share some insights on user research and market research? So this is a very important question, and I think user research is important at all stages, and then market research as well. When it comes to user research, when, for example, you're planning something, you go to the customer, and there are like different ways. So for example, if you say that, okay, these days it's like the lockdown and you can't reach the customer, so there are like online platforms as well, which we use. So I've used respondent.io, there's userinterviews.com, and then there are like a lot of other platforms that there's Validately, which give you insights into what users want. And it's always really interesting for me to actually talk to them, because in the very start, so, and there's like a way you talk to them. You can't really ask them that, oh, what do you want? Because then they'll say like a faster horse, and that's not something that you want to build. But you have to like say that, okay, this is the problem that I've noticed, and I need your insight. You also understand their process and ask them what their process is, and based on that you build something. And then you do usability testing, where people will give you like really interesting feedback. And while you're doing the usability testing, you don't really have to talk. You have to just let them use your product and then see what their input is. And it's really difficult to do that. Market research, it's a really extensive topic, and we can have like another talk on this. But a good way to do it would be to first look at your competitors and see their customers. So if you can reach out to their, like really reach and understand their customers, and if they're like really similar to the problem you're solving and they would not want to use your solution, that's a good way to start. Okay. And yeah, so you mentioned that Trello is a very good, or Lyra is a very good software. So yeah, and there are like other softwares as well. There's one called onroadmap.com, which is a very clean, nice way of creating roadmaps. But you can also do it inside tables. So roadmap is not something rigid, or if there's like no template, but you have to keep in mind these few things that will help you create a better roadmap. Okay, so there's another question. What would be your advice to someone who's just starting out in UX UI? Okay, how do we flourish in this field? Okay, so now this is like around UX, it's very important to understand, because UX designers are at the forefront. So like you get the idea and you get like, you understand the problem better. So you have like UX designers have the opportunity to talk to users. And I've seen a lot of UX designers who are not good with visual design. So you really don't need to worry about that. What you need to worry about is how good you're at research, how good you are at getting yourself into the user's shoes, understanding the users, and coming up with solutions that the users would want. And you really work closely with the product team, and usually UX designers are part of the product team, and they do a lot of research. That's what it's like at Youth and the previous companies I've worked at. Okay, let me see if there. Okay. So I think there are no questions. If there are any other questions, you can send them now. But thank you so much, guys, for joining this session. It has been really amazing talking about these things, because one, I personally feel like we as product makers forget these things. And secondly, if you're taking out time to join this, I really wanted to convey these few tricks and tips that would help you change the world. So thanks a lot, guys.